Hey, it's Dan here from The Plague. This week we're going to try something new. We're going to do our top five albums for the year of 1988. Joining me here is Nels.
Hello.
And we chose 1988 because that was the year that The Plague was actually founded. And we put our first issue out in that year, I think in the summer, if I'm not mistaken.
Sounds right.
Um, and yeah, we just thought it'd be a good place to start with. And the first thing we want to do is just kind of acknowledge like the top five albums in terms of popularity for that year and just kind of take those off the board so we can just kind of rank like some of the other ones as our favorites of the others. And this ranking is not anything scientific at all. It's just kind of me going through like what were the biggest albums of that year that were also like fairly well received by the fans and the critics. Because I know that there's like Megadeth's So Far So Good So What, for example, was a platinum seller, but yeah, it's not a favorite.
How?
Yeah,
Such a terrible album. I love that band, but man, that's not a good album.
yeah, and it's a short album. It's got a terrible cover song. It's badly produced. It's
Yes.
anyways, we'll move on from that.
Yes.
So yeah, just to acknowledge that the five what I consider to be like the five biggest albums of that year. Slayer, South of Heaven.
Yes.
Got up to 57 on the charts, which is kind of surprising.
That's amazing.
Went gold. Iron Maiden, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. A good album, not my favorite Maiden album, but it actually only went gold somehow. They're like the biggest band in the world, and that was one of their classic albums. But yeah, Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that went platinum, and I don't know what to say about that one because it's like it's barely a metal album in some ways. Like it's definitely that turning point where they went from being definitely a heavy metal band to whatever they became with Empire and
Oh man, yeah. I still really like that album. I don't like the ones before it or after it. Certainly the EP is my favorite by them, but I like that album. I like the songs. I like the way it's put together. But yeah, it's definitely not. I mean, there's some stuff on it that could be on any whatever David Bowie album or whatever.
Ozzy Osbourne, No Rest for the Wicked. First one with Zach. That one went double platinum.
And that was the first one with Zach, huh? That's amazing.
Yeah. Not my favorite Ozzy album by any stretch. Not even sure my favorite was Zach, but it might be. I don't really care for any of the later.
So far.
Oh, so far. Thank you. That's right. Well, he said he wasn't going to be on the new one, so it'll have to be the one after the next Ozzy album.
Right.
And then, of course, Metallica, Justice for All, which went 8 times platinum at this point.
A great album.
It is a great album, and it probably would have made my top 5, maybe. I don't know. I mean, there's so many great albums from this year that it's really hard to narrow it down to 5 anyways.
Yeah, it definitely would have made mine. I mean, it's not well recorded for Metallica, or maybe it's poorly mixed or whatever, but I still think it's a pretty standout album.
It is, yeah. And on that note, I think like compared to like all of the other Metallica albums, it's actually probably one of the better sounding ones.
Yeah, it just has no bass. It has
no bass. The drums sound a little weird, but
well, not by comparison.
Not by comparison, exactly. It's you compare it to the albums before it doesn't sound great. The ones after it, not so bad.
Yeah, that's true.
But it is it's a stunning album. I think it's like their most progressive, and like the song arrangements and stuff are just great. It's super heavy.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, everyone loves Metallica back then.
Back in those days.
So let's see. We're going to start by counting down from our number 5 upwards. Although this is like, as we were talking before we started recording, this is like pretty subjective because they're all like very different albums, and what's your favorite today might be different tomorrow. But anyway, just for the sake of having some kind of order, we'll start with number 5. And do you want to go first, or?
Sure. So number 5 for me
Oh, nice.
Might be on your list too. I don't know.
It is not.
Oh, what's the matter with you? Um, this album was a big surprise to me. I remember we went to see Megadeth, and there was some unknown opening band, Sanctuary, that we had no idea what they were going to be like. And they were just amazing. World End's vocals, just incredible. And I think we also saw them opening for Death Angel at some point. Anyway.
Yes, with Forbidden.
Oh, right. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So totally out of nowhere band, for me at least. And just like a really, really good first album. Not the best recording mix, sound quality, etc. It probably would be higher on my list if it were had better production on it. But yeah, definitely just awesome thrash album. Again, World End's vocals were just amazing. That for some reason that whole like early to mid thrash era with the super high vocals, when people can pull that off, it's just, I don't know. And there'll be another album on my list that has that as well. But yeah, really just a great album. Again, super surprising. Even the cover on here, which I usually cringe at covers, the cover on here of White Rabbit is actually really good.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
And something I want to talk about later is the amount of bizarre cover tunes that were done this year. But anyways,
yeah, it definitely seems like a trend, and probably there was something behind it, like record labels realized that you could make a video to the cover and it would get played in more places or something like that. But yeah, right. They were definitely a mixed bag, in my opinion. Like we already mentioned, the Megadeth cover of Anarchy. It's just like horrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sanctuary, definitely one of my top albums of '88. I will say though that there were so many that were close to getting that bottom spot or two on my list. '88 was an amazing year for just heavy metal in general. There was so much coming out. I mean, not compared to like today when we have the internet and all that good stuff, but looking back, it's amazing how much stuff came out in '88.
Yeah, and that album is one that I did really enjoy when it came out. I think I just didn't make my list because it's not one that I've gone back to as much as some of the other ones. But
yeah, I would agree with that as well.
And it could be because, like you said, the production's a little bit murky. It's not the best.
Yeah, it's just kind of flat. Like there's a lot of records like that where I just don't think that whoever somewhere down the chain of the recording engineer or the mixing engineer or the producer just kind of didn't capture the dynamics of it all, and it just ends up being just kind of muted.
And the late 80s seemed really bad for that for some reason. Like it seems like there were a lot more good sounding albums in the early 80s, and like we talked about Snow White is another album that came out this year that had like some great songs and great band, but production
terrible
mix just like really flat.
yeah, that's one in particular that even I think back in the day that really hurt that album, because that I've always liked that band. The songs on there are really good. The guitar playing is good, but just the production and mix on that they're so generic. It's just like flat, nothing. Makes it into a forgettable album, which should have been not a forgettable album.
Totally.
Anyway,
cool. All right. Well, my number 5 is probably the most controversial on my list because it's a band that's not always considered a heavy metal band because they're kind of all over the map. But Imaginos.
Nice.
This is an album that was like, even among fans of the band, is very kind of controversial because the band had kind of broken up for the most part at this point, and Albert Bouchard, the original drummer, had been fired like in the early 80s, and he was working on a solo album with Sandy Pearlman, who was their longtime producer. And it had been like languishing for years because the label didn't like his vocals on it or some nonsense. And it was this big conceptual piece. It was going to be like a double album, and it was going to be like a trilogy of double albums that they'd planned. Yeah. Anyway, so at some point, Sandy Pearlman talked the label and the band into coming together to take those demos and add Buck Dharma, Eric Bloom's vocals over most of it. Had a bunch of guest spots on it, like Joe Satriani and Mark Biederman from Blind Illusion, and just all kinds of different like musicians came in and did like little guest spots here and there.
Wow.
So it was almost more like a project than like a band effort. But I thought it turned out really well. Again, production audit kind of lets it down a little bit. It's a little bit murky in the mix department, a little bit too much reverb on drums and whatnot. But yeah, I love the songs. It's actually one of their heavier albums. The conceptual stuff doesn't get in the way of the album because it's like it's all kind of vague. It's a kind of a weird, convoluted storyline, anyways. And then the songs are kind of placed out of order from how they would go in the storyline. So it's more like a mental puzzle that you can kind of try to put together if you want, but you can just ignore it too. And
more fun for the listener.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my pick for number 5.
It's funny how, it's like pick a stereotypical way to have a musical project be a failure. And that is to have it just be this grandiose thing. And yet people set out with that in mind all the time.
All the time.
I'm going to be the one that makes this work. And then, the fact that they were able to salvage this and bring it around into some semblance of something that actually saw the light of day is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Joe Satriani, I probably knew that back then. I just forgot about that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's some other people on here too that I'm totally drawing a blank on, but
it's too bad with all that interesting material, interesting people, lineup stuff that they dropped the ball on the production.
I know. It's not horrible or anything, and you kind of get used to it, after the first couple songs, but still it's Aldo Nova.
Oh, Aldo Nova.
He plays on it. Robbie Krieger plays on it. Really? Yeah.
Aldo Nova was a big name back in those days.
Yeah. Actually,
not necessarily in the metal genre.
No, but he did have some. Well, he had at least one hit.
Didn't he?
Fantasy.
Yeah. Didn't he write some stuff for somebody?
He wrote a song for Blister Cult actually on the album.
Wow, that makes sense.
And he played on that song too on the album.
Interesting. Well, that's cool. All right.
Number 4.
Is it me next?
It's you.
My number 4 is one that's not going to be your number 4, but I know it's on your list. It's one of the ones that I sadly only have on CD, but I'm glad I have it on CD. This is probably my favorite Riot album, Thundersteel by Riot, obviously, in case that didn't come across. To me, this is the prototypical early speed metal, not thrash, but speed metal, where you had and not all of it. I mean, there's quite a bit of variety, but a number of the songs just had that, by today's standards, really straightforward double bass going on, really intense vocals. The guy has quite a range again, and it's just that tempo and that early speed metal really works for me. And in general, I think this is a really well recorded album too. It sounds really good. Like all the stuff comes across really clearly. I don't know a whole bunch about the band's what the status of the band was at this time and what they were going through. They've obviously been through a lot of different ups and downs in their career, and you probably know a lot more about it than I do. But for me, this is an album that I think maybe back in the day I didn't appreciate as much. Maybe, but it's one that I come back to and I listen to quite often still, and it always impresses me. Again, that just like that. It's kind of like the Except Restless and Wild. It's got that double bass, and but it's not thrash. It's definitely speed metal. It's to me that's really cool. And so that's my number 4, I guess.
Yeah, it's almost like the template for power metal too.
Yes, that's a very good analogy as well.
Because it's very fast, it's very melodic, it's got it's like soaring vocals and but it's not like you said, it's not all of that straight through, so it doesn't get boring. There's a lot of variety on that album.
Yeah, there really is quite a lot of variety, and his vocals are just really good. It's the sort of piercing, uh, good range, really clear, clean
Hmm.
sounding vocals. You know, with today's, there's such a tendency today to have just really rough and gruff vocals, which is fine, and sometimes that works really well. But people that can pull it off and have a really clean vocal approach, delivery, I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I was amazed when they came back in 2015 or whenever the hell it was. I think it was 2012. And he could still sing like that. Like Tony
That
One.
is incredible. So many people that have that range. Well, I mean, sadly, Worrell Dane,
Mm,
back in the day, his range was amazing. And as his career went on, that became definitely not his forte. And I don't know if that's just because, just from age maybe, or um, not practicing that style as much, or whatever, because it's fairly common for people to lose that range as they as their career progresses.
yeah. And it could also be like artistic choice too. It's hard to say.
Yes, that's true.
Like with Phil Anselmo, like I
Oh
feel like he
yeah,
probably could still sing that way well into the 90s, but he just didn't want
yeah.
to.
And that's a really good example. I mean, his vocal range was super impressive, even on Cowboys from Hell.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. Yeah, but then of course they got more into that sort of whatever it was,
Groove metal.
something. Yeah, just that vocal delivery. It's like, yeah, I understand it's powerful and it has a lot of punch to it, but now you sound just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That album, I love that album. It actually didn't make my list, but it was like right. It was so close. Like, and I went back and forth on a lot of these too, but that was one that just barely missed my list. But yeah, I
my
love
bottom three were like that. I had like, oh man, yeah, oh, but this one has this problem, and this one has,
it. Yeah,
there were
yeah.
several that could have made the bottom three for me, the bottom two at least.
So my number four is the third album from Sweden's Candlemass.
Oh, yes. Yes.
One of my favorite doom metal bands. As far as the epic doom metal, they've been pretty much invented it and were the master of it for those first four albums. I think are all just like stunning. And I know, I mean, Epicus Demicus Metallicus, that was the first album I heard by them and I loved it. And it's still my favorite. I think it's a lot of people's favorite. It's so heavy. The songs are so good. And the original vocalist, I always forget his name, but he was amazing. And Messiah Marklin is not as good, but I mean, he still has his qualities. And I think he's got like such a unique voice that it's hard to not like his work. As much as I love Nightfall, it to me suffered that production issue. Like everything just sounds washed out on it. Like it just is drowning in reverb. Whereas this album, it seems a much clearer and punchier, and I think that really just suits their sound so much better. So,
right.
And the other thing on this album that they did that could have gone horribly wrong, but I actually quite enjoy it, is the Black Sabbath medley that's tacked on the end.
Yeah.
You remember that? Where they just take like 8 different Black Sabbath songs or something and just kind of like combine the riffs into this one big thing. And it's like, it's kind of silly, but I don't know, it actually works pretty good. And
yeah, not unlike what Sabbath would tend to do live, especially with Dio. It's like
yes.
these 3 songs at least and merge them all together. Yeah, that's a really good album. And man, it's definitely, if you want to listen to heavy music, it's like none more heavy. It's really heavy.
Yeah. Cool.
Especially for its time.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the doom metal thing was still relatively, not a thing even at this time. I mean, you had bands like Trouble and Saint Vitus and stuff like the Pentagram, but
right.
It wasn't like Solitude Eternus, I guess too. But yeah, it wasn't like today where it's just like
Yeah.
hundreds of bands.
Right. Hundreds of bands, and every single vocalist is like, God, that does sound like Ozzy. It's kind of amazing how that's become a whole genre unto itself. It's Ozzy Osbourne vocal styles.
Yeah, the stoner doom.
Yeah, it's great that there's so much doom metal coming out. I love it, and don't get me wrong. In fact, all genres of metal, I think, have really blossomed in this current age. But yeah, back then that was a heavy album.
All right, number 3.
So these, boy, I really kind of struggled to. I kind of struggled to put these in order, but I'm going to go with Flotsam and Jetsam, No Place for Disgrace. Got that great Boris cover.
Amazing.
I think is great. I mean, this, I mean, as much as like the Riot, we talked about that being, this is speed metal. This is thrash metal. I mean, I believe this is their second album, and it to me, it has much better recording quality, though it's kind of generic. It's still a pretty good recording, and it just, that thrash metal with the intense riffs, and the obviously the double bass and stuff. If you can get that recording really sharp and clean, I think it just shines through. And this album definitely has that. It's heavy. The first album was really good too, just not as well recorded in my opinion. And yeah, this is an album that I kind of forget about every once in a while, and then I go back to it and I go, oh yeah. I read a few reviews of it recently when I was doing some research for this, where people said, well, it's just part 2 of the first album, and I'm like, no, it's not. To me, this was like them going, nope, we're on the first tier. We're like right up there with everybody else that's doing thrash right now. Certainly all the Bay Area type thrash sound. Has some Jason Newsted penned songs on it. I don't think he plays on it at all, but I believe he wrote several of the songs. Yeah, just a great album. Again, it has a cover song on it, which is definitely not my favorite. It works, but it's like you threw that on there for the purpose of having a commercial-ish cover song on the album, is my impression. And it's, Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, which I believe is an Elton John song. Yeah, that is kind of the low point for me, but the rest of it is just straightforward thrash metal. 1988 thrash metal.
Yeah, that is a classic album. I just love, besides the fact that all of the songs on it, or all of the original songs on it, are great.
Yes.
Like, it's not a bad song in that album.
Really isn't.
That guitar tone is just so crunchy and heavy. Oh my God. Every time I put that on, it's just like.
That's one of the things that I think comes across really well with the recording quality that they did get. It's like you can really hear all those, just the heaviness of that guitar, and it's like all the triplets and fast stuff. And again, Eric AK's voice. There's another guy that has a very unique voice, but also quite the range, and I think he still does. I can't say that for sure, but I think he's one of those guys that has managed to maintain it. And then it's just got like some stereotypically good, like, song titles and then the lyrics, I live, you die. It's like, that's just great. No Place for Disgrace obviously is cool. Escape from Within, that's just a fantastic song. And really, again, I think that getting that cover, I don't know how much they had to pay for that, but it's a really cool cover. Boris Vallejo.
I can't remember if that was like, did they commission that, or was that
I almost think they did commission it, which seems odd nowadays, but yeah, I don't know.
I mean, he did a lot of stuff for different people, so I wouldn't.
Yeah, and there's plenty of really talented artists that do a lot of commission stuff. I mean, Greg Hildebrandt springs to mind as somebody that's very active up to this day and does tons of stuff for books and movie posters and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, they may have commissioned that.
And that was Elektra, right?
This is, it says Metal Blade Records Elektra on it.
Okay. Oh, because the first one was Metal Blade. They must have still had the contract or something.
Probably, yeah. 1988 Elektra Asylum, right? So their first major label album, which probably is why they got the recording quality they did on this one and not on the first one.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a direct correlation between, well, not always for sure, but sometimes there's a correlation between how much you paid for the production and or how much you could spend on the production, how good it sounds.
The songs you mentioned, Jason Newsted having co-written some of them.
Yeah,
I know that at least a couple of those songs like date back to like well before the first album, because I've seen some like live clips of them from like 85 or something where they're playing, I think I Live You Die, and one of the other ones, Any Terror, maybe.
Any Terror, I think, is one of the Jason Newsted co-wrote. But yeah, definitely one of those bands that you can tell they were in a scene doing lots of stuff before they became a recording artist.
Right.
And so there was, kind of like Megadeth, certainly, that they just had a lot of songs that didn't come out on the first album, maybe, in this case, came out on the second album, but had been around for a while.
Cool. That is an album that was on my list originally, and it got bumped off because I went back and listened to this next album, and it was just like, okay, I have to have this on my list, because as much as I remember loving it, it's even better than I remember. And that's Suicidal Tendencies.
Yes.
This album, oh my God, it's funny too, because in one of the first issues of The Plague, I remember when we got this album, you and me and Vico were all kind of disappointed at first, because it was like, we loved the band, and it was like, oh, this just sounds like too polished and kind of generic. And I ended up reviewing it because I think I liked it the best. And I still gave it a really mediocre review. But then by the end of the year, it's like, holy shit, this album is so good.
Yeah. Isn't that strange how sometimes back in the moment you think one thing and then later you're like, what was I thinking?
Totally with the case with this, because I mean, the production is still not my favorite. It's a little bit like, it's Mark Dodson, I think, right?
I think so. It definitely works though, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's definitely Mark Dodson and Suicidal Tendencies.
Okay. Yeah. And he, it's polished, but it's like, yeah, you can hear all the elements of the songs, and the lyrics on this album are just classic. I mean, it's Mike Muir's best lyrics. It's a very thrashy album. There's a lot of fast songs on it. There's a couple slower songs and mid-pace songs. It's everything that they did well, like on one album. And again, I don't think there's a bad song on here. Like even like Surf and Slam, the instrumental. It's like, I love that song.
I love Surf and Slam.
Yeah. So it's definitely one of those albums that took a little bit to grow on me, obviously, but then once it did, it was just like became my favorite, and it's still my favorite Suicidal album. So
yeah. The only thing that I reach for more than this when I think of Suicidal is the EP that came out for How Will I Laugh Tomorrow, because it has all those No Mercy covers on it. Waking the Dead.
Yeah.
Which I have, man, I can't find my CD of that. It just pisses me off. I'm sure it's around somewhere. But anyway, yeah, this album, since it's my next album, let's talk about it. It's funny when I just think of this album, I just think of, oh yeah, that's one of the Suicidal Tendencies albums from that middle period where they were a big MTV band. But when I listen to it, I'm like, oh my God, this is a great album from the very beginning. You hear that Mike Muir come in and say, can you turn the lights down? It's just like, and then it goes into Trip to the Brain. It's just amazing stuff. Mike Clark, Suicidal, the story is that No Mercy was a band, Mike Clark's band, right? And they lost their singer, and Mike Muir became their singer. And then at some point, the two bands kind of merged together, and you get Mike Clark in Suicidal Tendencies. And for me, that's like when Suicidal became what I think of as Suicidal. They're a thrash band. Now they've got that punk feel to it. They've got that sort of funk feel to it as well. But man, they're such a good thrash band, and Mike Clark's guitar playing is just really everything on it here is just like really accurate. Like they're on time. Everything's just sounds really, really good as far as the guitar playing. Rocky George is a great lead guitar player.
My God, yeah.
But yeah, this album, it's definitely one of those ones I forget about every once in a while. But every time I go back to it, I think, oh, I'll listen to that one song, and I end up listening to the whole thing because it's just that good, and it is all the way through. And I mean, the picture on the back cover.
Yeah, this goes back to the Hidden Gems, where I was talking about album covers that have the band on it. Like, I usually don't like this, but I love this album cover. Like the photo on the front and the back, they're just both fantastic.
They're so like LA,
yeah,
gangster. It just works though. Again, it's one of those things that in my mind I think of it as being a little more cliched than the actual effect. When you go and look at it, it's like, no, this was perfect. This is awesome.
Yeah, the guitar playing on this album is just off the charts. Like, and it's like it almost never stops. There's a couple songs where it seems like Rocky is just soloing like through the whole song practically.
I know,
but it works. Like it's like,
yeah, it's so good. And again, the recording makes it so none of those parts get mushed together. All the rhythm guitar parts are really clean. Mm-hmm. Who's their drummer? I don't remember who the drummer was on this.
He is amazing.
Okay, yeah, RJ Herrera, who I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't know of anything else that he's worked on, but really good drumming.
Yeah. Very underrated, I think.
Yeah. Mike Muir, though. Man, Mike. Yeah. Mike Muir is one of those guys that he almost, again, when I think of him, he almost feels like a caricature of himself. He's so like loud and kind of, but when it's working, it's like totally unique, one of a kind, and I think it's awesome. And that was my next album, so now we're all going to be all like out of order.
Oh,
I guess you have to do.
Well, no, wait. Yeah, so that was your number what? 2?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll do my number 2 next.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. All right. My number 2.
Oh, yeah. I was waiting for that one.
Yeah. This is a band that I got into on Killing Technology was, I think, the first time that I heard them properly and just loved it. Like their combination of thrash, like really punky thrash with like these like weird, chords and like progressive tendencies even back then with their arrangements and stuff. And then, Snake's bizarro vocals over top of it. It's just, yeah, they're such a unique band. Like every member of this band, like Away's drumming is just so his own style. Blackie's bass, that blower bass, with the really distorted sound, just his thing.
Yep.
And although, I think Killing Technology is still, going to be my favorite album of theirs probably forever. This is probably right up there, probably the second one. This or Nothing Face. I think Nothing Face sounds a little better. Like it's the production's better, but I think the songs on here are stronger. And yeah, it's definitely a weird album. There's lots of just weird change-ups, lyrics. It's a conceptual album that makes some sense, if you follow it through. I couldn't explain it to anyone, but it's interesting, and it doesn't just detract from the the overall enjoyment of the album or the songs individually. Like, some concept albums, there'll be like half the songs will be like little pieces of something that aren't even a real song just to make the storyline work. And
right.
None of that here. Just, yeah. And again, no bad songs on here. Once again, going for those strange cover tunes. The CD version has a cover of the Batman theme.
Oh my God.
Which is great.
Which is great.
Of course.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely an odd one, but yeah, I love it. It's one I've listened to over and over, and when I go back to listen to Voivod now, it's one of the ones I go to most often.
Yeah, they're definitely no matter what else, they're a very unique band. They didn't seem like they were trying to be anything else. They were trying to do their thing, and this was it. And they were really good at it. But unique is definitely a word that, man, that comes up anytime I think of Voivod.
Okay.
Well,
you ready for number one?
And again, my top three, maybe even all five of them, it's like, well, I didn't really. They could have gone in a lot of different orders.
Absolutely.
But for me,
oh wow,
the new order. This is an album that until recently I didn't listen to it very much. Back in the day when it came out, I listened to it a ton. But I never bought it on CD. And then recently I for some reason thought of it and picked it up. And yeah, to me, this is again that early Bay Area thrash sound. This is it. And that's a type of music that I just really liked and still really like. And I felt like they did a really good job on this. I believe this is their second album.
Yep.
Yeah, second album. There is definitely, I would say, some a little bit of filler on this album. Supposedly, when they recorded it, it wasn't long enough to meet their contractual obligations. So they went back and recorded some. I think there's some instrumental stuff on it, and yeah, 2 instrumental songs, 2 or 3. And it's funny because in the little blurb that I read about that, they said the minimum running length was 40 minutes in their contract.
Wow.
This runs for 39 minutes and 22 seconds. So I think maybe someone's either misremembering or they just were a little bit lenient, but whatever. And there's a cover song on here too, right?
Yes, Aerosmith.
Right.
It's actually really
like
good.
that song. I don't like that song that much.
I
mean, it's better than the Aerosmith version by a lot, but that supposedly was added on afterwards as well.
Yeah, I can see that.
But yeah, to me, Alex Skolnick's guitar playing and Eric Peterson's guitar playing both, so the rhythm and the lead stuff, really, really good. Chuck Billy's vocals, I think, are really good. He definitely is that, like, the antithesis of the sort of high-ranging vocal style. He has more of that just punchy, growly delivery, but he was really good at it for sure. Alex Perry-Alice production or mixing, at least, produced and mixed. So yeah, that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, and the other thing about Chuck Billy is he's just got such a unique voice too. Like, yeah,
he does.
Strong. It covers a lot of ground. Like he can actually do ballads, which when the first time they did a ballad, I was like, whoa, this is actually pretty good. He can actually sing.
Yeah, he's very talented. Yeah. Oh yeah, and just there's some of the songs which I think this is a band who going into this recording this, they didn't have a lot of the older material that was going to roll over from their first album. That is my impression. But like Trial by Fire and Into the Pits and The Preacher, there's just some really good songs on here. Again, this is a YouTube or Wikipedia fact, but a lot of the really good songs off here, they still play in their live set today, which is always, with a band that's been around for that long, has so many albums, that's saying something.
Yeah. That album, for some reason, it never completely clicked with me. I like it a lot. And like the songs you mentioned are all amazing, especially Trial by Fire. Like for
Trial by Fire, yeah.
For being a single, like that was like such a cool choice because it's got like everything in it. It's got like mid-tempo stuff. It's got the cool little bass parts that are isolated. It's got the fast parts. It's just great song. But yeah, I don't know. I love the first album so much. And then I think, I don't know, Practice What You Preach had a little bit more production that I liked. But
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, if I had to rank their albums, it might be my second favorite, actually, in terms of just the material, nothing else.
Yeah, I think Practice What You Preach, that one is where it all really came together, and they were fully mature, and everything really clicked right then for them. So I definitely agree. But this one just has some. It does feel a little bit like they claim it was rushed, and there was they had to actually improvise and come up with some stuff at the very end. And it does feel like it's not a complete album, but the individual songs that are on there that are good are just standouts. Disciples of the Watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's on Atlantic Records. Huh.
I believe their first album was they were the first band to have a debut thrash album on a major label with The Legacy.
That's cool.
I think that's the fun
The
fact.
Legacy, that's a great album. That is a really great album. Not quite the production quality, but still.
That's the one thing about it that could be a little bit.
All right.
So my number one album is one that I'm surprised wasn't on your list. So I don't know if you just didn't think about it, but it is this gem.
Yes, I did think about it, but I knew it was going to be on your list, so I allowed that to color my my thoughts a little bit. I did that with a couple of them, to be honest.
So the first album from Sabbath, History.
I love that album.
So good. It's again one that I don't know was on my radar right away. But which is weird because I remember you got that the flexi disc of Blood for the Blood God.
Yeah.
That came out before this did even. So we
I
knew
still
of the
have
band. I think it's just one of those cases of like no one bought the album right away and we didn't get a promo of it back in the day. So there was no way to hear it until somebody actually bought the album.
Back in those days.
But man, again, another thrash album. There's so many thrash albums this year that are just so good. Every song on here, this sounds familiar.
Yeah, no, I know.
There's not a bad song on here.
It's totally true.
The instrument, the Church Bazaar, the very last song, is probably my least favorite. But it's still a good song.
It wanders a little bit.
Yeah. And the lyrics, I mean, Martin Walkey has always been just a master of lyrics, and
his delivery on there is just it's amazing.
It's priceless.
It's so good. At first, when I very first heard it, it annoyed me a little bit, but the more I listened to it, the more I was like, find myself singing them later on. It's like, so good.
It's funny how certain singers that have like a very distinctive style kind of do that, like King Diamond. I mean, just example, like the first time you hear them, you're like, oh my God, what is he doing? Like that's wrong. No one, not supposed to sing like that. yeah, for sure. But then it grows on you. I mean, there's a lot of things in life that are like that, that are acquired tastes or whatever that become your favorite things. I definitely would say that about Sabbath. Yeah. Production's not amazing. Like it's kind of, missing the bottom end a little bit, but it still sounds pretty good. And I love the songs. They're like my favorite thrash band for a while. This and Dreamweaver to me are just like two of the best thrash albums ever made.
Yeah.
So
it's sad, that they just never seemed like they got quite the attention that they deserved, because they were just really head and shoulders. I mean, they were up there with the top bands. I think they were doing yes, it's very thrash and it has all those elements, but it's pretty original stuff. It doesn't sound like a bunch of other people.
Nope.
Well put together.
They had those crazy arrangements that were just, it was like Merciful Fate at times. Like they would just be like, you'd never quite sure where it was going to go, but it was always someplace interesting,
Yep. And who would have guessed that would then be the guitar player for Judas Priest?
I did not see that coming at the time. And considering how I have issues with the production and mix on both of their first two albums. The fact that he became like this legendary producer.
Oh yeah,
I didn't see that coming either.
Yeah, and he's just amazingly accomplished too.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff that the sound quality and mix and everything that he usually comes up with, it's like it's perfect. You know, it's like right on point for what it needs to be.
Cool. So let's throw some honorable mentions out there too, since there were so many that I wanted to add to this list.
There's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you've mentioned you chose several of the ones that almost made my list. I also want to mention Halloween, Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2.
Yeah.
That's a band that I love their early stuff, especially, and that album it's just got some great songs on it. It's like that, and the first part are like the template for all European power metal going forward, for better or worse.
Yeah, super influential for sure.
Michael Kiskay's vocals on that album are, if you haven't listened to him singing in a while, you should go back and listen to some of his singing. It's just mind-boggling. That guy's, and he still sounds like that too. Like,
that's amazing.
It's crazy. Liege Lord, Master Control.
Oh yeah,
those kind of underground metal blade bands that
right.
They had like a big change up at that time. They got a new singer. They kind of went heavier, not quite thrash, but definitely going in that direction. And that is just a killer album. Like, it's just super dense and heavy, and just really, really great songs. They do again a cover tune. They do "Kill the King."
Oh wow! I mean, if you're gonna do a cover song,
yeah, you pick from the best. So
that's right.
DRI, Four of a Kind.
Oh,
that was another one. That, that's a band that I had heard a little bit before that, but that was the first like full album I heard by them, and it was definitely where they transitioned, I think, fully into being more of a metal band than a punk band. But
yeah, complete crossover.
Just some great songs on there. And then one I'm sure you probably appreciate too, Hallow's Eve.
Oh yeah.
Which again that one's got another cover tune, which was a very odd choice. The Queen, Sheer Heart Attack.
Oh yeah.
Like a weird punky version of that song, which is like, okay, that
so many people have covered that.
Yeah.
Kind of
but yeah, at the end of the day, it's a short album, but it's like all the originals on there. Just great production too. That was like one of the few albums I thought like was really well sounded really good.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think so. A couple of my honorable mentions: Pantera, power metal.
Yes.
I struggled with almost picking them. But since we'd already very recently talked about that album in particular, I did not pick it, but I still think it's a standout album from any year, basically. Really good album. Not the best production, not the best recording quality, obviously, but not terrible either.
Right.
Just not very modern sounding, if that makes sense. Like, it's so easy to get modern, clear recordings these days, relatively speaking. But yeah, the great album. And Holy Terror. God, what's the name of that album?
Mind Wars, I believe.
Mind Wars, yes.
Yeah.
There's a great example of an album that did not receive the recording quality that it deserved.
No.
But a great and super unappreciated album. It's going to have to be one of my hidden gems at some point, because I just really like that album, despite the fairly terrible production and recording, honestly. But yeah, really, like, for a band that disappeared a little bit. I mean, I know that there's one of the founding guys is still around and still does stuff now, but they were way ahead of their time. It sounded, a lot of the stuff they did sounded very modern and very like where thrash was going, as well as being just squarely in the middle of where thrash was at the time as well. But yeah, I definitely thought about picking them, but the recording quality is just not, it's not good enough. The material is great though.
Yeah, they have like such a unique vocalist too. Like he did like some kind of melodic singing, and he would kind of like veer from that like into the like harsher stuff. But
Right. And a lot of their music was pretty harsh sounding too. I mean, they definitely nailed that. It's somewhat similar to Voivod's like uniqueness, and just like if you just think about it on its own, it's kind of grating and angsty and harsh, but it worked really well.
I think another band it kind of was in that vein was Coroner. Like they did some like
yes,
progressive stuff that was ahead of its time, but it was still very thrashy and in the moment.
Yeah, they're definitely a band. One of the I'm drawing a blank on the album title, but one of the Corner albums is just it's still one of my favorite albums. One of the earlier ones.
Cool. Yeah, I wanted to just go over a couple more of the poorly chosen cover songs from 1988.
Oh God, yes, please.
We talked about Megadeth, but Anthrax doing Antisocial. I know it's like become a staple in their set, but I still hate that song.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't understand why they love it and why fans like it. I don't get it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Slayer's Dissident Aggressor is one that I don't think is bad, and I love the original.
Right.
I just don't think they did that much with it compared to like what they did with In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. That was a cool cover.
In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida is amazing. Yeah, I remember when Slayer did that one, and I remember thinking, "Oh, this is going to be awesome," and it's like, just kind of flat. And I remember reading at the time that they were like, "Yeah, we're never doing covers again because it just doesn't work out."
The one that probably my favorite cover tune done this year, Death Angel with Cold Gin.
Oh yes. That's
really
classic.
Good. Yeah,
that is just classic.
And that was an album that I thought about. I mean,
yes,
it's got some issues. It's not my favorite Death Angel album, but it does have some great songs on it.
It really, really does. It came super close to making my list. Yeah. There were honestly, God, there were so many. Again, there were so many great albums that year. It was the bottom like 2 or 3 spots for me were just like, pick one.
An embarrassment of riches.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, we talked about Flotsam, Halsey, Testament. Okay. Getting out of the thrash realm for a moment. Probably the worst cover done this year. Judas Priest, Johnny Be Good on Ram It Down was such a poor choice. I don't know where. I mean, well, I do know. I mean, the story there was that they were approached to use one of their songs from Turbo in the Top Gun movie. They said, no, we want it for our own album. That went on to be a huge soundtrack hit. It would have been a big thing for their career. But so the next time somebody came to them with a movie soundtrack idea, it was Johnny Be Good, which was a terrible movie, a terrible idea for them to cover.
Yes.
And then they put it on their album too. So it's like...
And of course, but I think it sets that particular album off really well. It's like if you're going to have a horrible cover song, have it on your most horrible album.
Yeah.
Close to your most horrible album.
Yeah, let's not go too crazy. I mean, it's definitely right down there at the bottom, but
mostly because of the lyrics for me. They're just like, ugh.
The lyrics are crazy.
It's kind of odd to say that because on a lot of metal, I don't really care what the lyrics are, to be honest.
And the production and the fact they use a drum machine and it's just everything about it is really not great.
Yep.
There's like 2 or 3 good songs. So
yes, there are.
I can't write it off completely.
No.
And then Gravedigger on their album Witch Hunter, which was a decent album.
Yeah, it definitely was.
They did a cover of School's Out, the song that everybody covers and does a terrible job of. Because
it's a terrible song. Oh my God.
So I just had to get
Yeah, it's interesting. I really do think that, at the time, MTV was super big for getting coverage, and they were turning on to metal bands at the time. Or maybe had very much turned on to metal bands. And I really think that it was somebody's great A&R idea that they would go, oh, we'll license this song that everyone already knows the song and it was popular. We'll get you guys to record it. You'll do a video of it and you're going to sell 1 million albums, baby. And it's like, well, maybe. And in some cases, when the band could actually make it into their song and do a good job, which plenty of them did, but a lot of them didn't. And it just seemed like, man, total trend. Everybody's doing it.
So for fun here, I thought we would go back and look at, since we still have the original issues, this is one from early 89 where we chose our top 10 albums from 1988. And I thought I'd just go through and read these to see how much our tastes have changed or if there's any that we like totally spaced on.
Yeah, for sure.
So I will start with mine. My number 10 on here was Wargasm. Why Play Around?
Really?
Yeah. Do you remember that band?
I would have to listen to the album to remember what it sounded like, but I do remember the band.
They were pretty good. They were heavy. They were kind of almost thrash. I don't know how to really define them, but yeah, anyways. They're kind of like Hall of Eve, who were number 9 with Monument.
Nice.
Number 8, Candlemass, Ancient Dreams.
Monument, by the way, was a great album. How did I miss that for my top 10? I love that album.
Monument.
Yeah.
Number 8, Candlemass. Number 7, Flotsam and Jetsam. So that made my top 10 at the time.
Yeah.
6, Suicidal Tendencies. So nice. Obviously I'd listened to it a few times by then.
Yeah.
Number 5, Death Angel, Frolic Through the Park.
Yeah.
Number 4, Blue Oyster Cult, Imaginos.
There you go.
3, Slayer, South of Heaven.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I don't know if honestly I would put that on my list now. It's
I probably would. I think it's a great album. It's less original than anyway, we could talk all day about Slayer.
Yeah. Number 2, Metallica, and Just for All. And number 1, Voivod.
Nice. Well, there you go. Consistency, Dan.
All right. Your number 10 was Acrofet.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. I like that album. I do like that album.
Number 9, Sanctuary.
All right.
8, Holy Terror.
Yes. Good. That's amazing to me.
Number 7, Joe Satriani.
Okay. Yeah. That is a great album that is amongst a whole group of albums that have just been worn out in my brain, and I can't really appreciate them the way that I used to as much. Every once in a while I go back and listen to it. It's a great album.
Number 6, Nuclear Assault, Survive.
Yeah, that also came very close to making my list. Not sure why it didn't, honestly, because I do like that album.
That's one I have not been able to find on CD or LP. Like, I just can't find that album. I mean, I'm sure I could get it on eBay, but like... Yes.
It's all a question of money, Dan.
I know. Number 5, Candlemass.
Oh, good. Good for me.
4, Suicidal Tendencies.
Nice.
3, Death Angel.
Okay.
And
I do
2,
like
Metallica.
Okay. Yeah.
And number 1, Slayer.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Very, very cool.
So actually,
those are not far off from my tastes today, really. That Death Angel album, I really do like it. If I was putting this top 5 list together again 10 times, I might pick them like 4 or 5 of the times. You know, it's a good album. It's just not as, I don't know. It's not the sum of its there's a lot of little pieces on it that are just awesome, but it doesn't gel for me necessarily.
It's kind of like the New Order. It feels like it's a little bit rushed. It doesn't have the, like, you know, the first album had like all the songs that they'd been playing for years and years and years, and
right.
The third album they'd like really matured and really got what they wanted.
Yeah, Frolic is really good though. It just it definitely has its highs and lows. Yeah. Guitar playing obviously is fantastic on it. I think the guy is just amazing guitar player. Well, that's cool. I was less shocked by any of our choices than I thought I might be.
I know. It'll be interesting if we do this again for a later year. But I was expecting there to be more like, oh my God. I put that, like, I'm surprised King Diamond didn't make my list.
Yeah.
Which, it's not a bad album by any means. It's just not my favorite. I don't think it's as good as the first two. Or
right.
The Eye or some of the
The
other ones.
Eye. Whoa, that's just a great album.
Yeah. Yeah, if we do 1990 or whenever that came out, that'll probably definitely be in my list. But
It's funny when you go back and you look at these lists of metal albums that came out in the year blah. Man, just the scope of it just blows up at some point. There's just so much. And if you go back much earlier, it's like, well, not all that much came out in this year.
yeah, when we were first talking about doing this, I looked at 1980, thinking,
Yeah.
well, start at the beginning of the decade, and that would be a cool place to, just start 80, 81.
Right.
And I'd still like to go back and do 1980 at some point, but the number of metal albums that came out in 1980 is like pretty slim. I mean, you have to really start including a lot of hard rock albums in there
for sure.
as well.
Yep. Well, and again, just like a lot of the albums from, 88, it's like thrash was becoming a thing, and there's a lot of stuff that was almost thrash or kind of speed metal. Well, back in 1980, it was like, this is almost heavy metal or,
That's
getting
true.
towards that kind of thing from the hard rock. But at some point, it's kind of a pointless to even try to categorize them. But
Yeah, just like making a list of the best is pointless.
yes. Mostly when you make a list of the best, it just makes you think of all the things that for whatever reason didn't make the list, and then you second guess them.
Yeah.
Much like life itself. Yeah.
On that note, I think we will close up 1988. But thanks for watching this, anyone out there. And please let us know if you have any favorites from 1988 that I'm guessing there's a lot of people that would have put Death probably in their top 5.
Yeah. Which album was
Leprosy?
Okay, yeah.
But anyways, just leave some comments. Let us know what your favorites were. If you violently disagree with ours, that's fine. But
yeah, let us know if we dissed your favorite band.
if you think Megadeth So Far So Good So What was the best album of all time, please let us know. We want to.
Yeah, Dave. Let us know.
Anyways, until next time, thanks for joining us, and stay metal.
Yes.